Hi there, my name is Alita Gonzalez, and this is Module 3, Individual Assignment of Educational Leader Interview for EDU 304 Coursework, Identity, and Career course. For this interview, I decided to interview Ashley Leha. There is a picture of her on the top right side of the slide, as well as a picture underneath where it is her on the left side and me on the right side. She has been working at Starbucks for approximately 5 years, but she has been a shift lead as well as a trainer for 2 years. The date of this interview was September 6, 2024. So for some roles and responsibilities that Ashley carries, I decided to ask her these 2 questions. I asked her, what does it mean to be a shift lead, where she responds that when a barista is promoted to a shift lead, you are just given more responsibilities and you have the great opportunity, but it also comes with a lot of pressure. Some of the things that she has to do on the regular basis is both being in charge of baristas and having to run shifts, as well as like the usual management side of managing safes, tilts, orders, and other stuff. With her work, she requires a lot of dedication to day-to-day obligations, as well as using the expertise she carries in order to run shifts efficiently and effectively. Now, what does a typical day look like? For Ashley, a typical day means just being ready for the inconsistency. There is many days where you'll have good days, bad days, and at the end, you have to prioritize yourself and your baristas, as well as the customers. You have to be ready to use that experience to manage with some changes, setbacks, and other things that you might have to face on a daily basis. So for a shift lead, it's important to make sure that everyone is focused and ready to have a good day in order to manage the floor correctly, as well as manage everyone else correctly. For Ashley's leadership style, she likes to sympathize with many of her partners. She understands that she is an authority figure that has to direct them, take on the responsibilities of a manager, and be able to put her foot down, but she also wants to be aware of her barista. She wants to be able to understand them, respect them in a way where she is able to approach them with any issues that she might have, whether she has to redirect them and doing drinks, connecting with customers, and so on, and that way she'll be able to connect with them more. Like Starbucks, there are many different organizations that hinder to how we work with one another, which I think that her leadership style kind of relates to our research-based style that we have read through our articles in this module on adapting to a leadership style that is suited for all and not just a one-size-fits-all approach. Everyone is a different learner, so there are different approaches when it comes to redirecting them, and I think that Ashley explained that perfectly well as she went on to working during her shifts, working with other shift leads as well, and just taking on that role as a manager. For data-driven decision-making, we decided to separate them into 2 questions. One where I believe she will not be using data as often, which are her day-to-day decisions on the floor, to where she most likely will be using data, and that comes from her being as a trainer and taking on new baristas and teaching them the way on how they pick up on the Starbucks policy and just the regulations that they have in order to become a perfect barista. So when I asked her if she were to tend to use any data on her day-to-day decisions, she acknowledges that she really doesn't use data, but she instead takes on what she perceives on the floor and just takes things into consideration over time. If she notices that her barista is struggling with making drinks, possibly making customer connections, and so on, she will take that into consideration and just try to push them into being a more well-rounded barista. That could be them practicing on the bar in the morning, them having to be at window to be able to grow them into growing connections with the customers, and so on. It does get a little complicated when it comes to certain times of the day or even of the year, such as during peak times, during holidays, and so on. But she does take that into consideration in order to help improve her baristas. Now, as a trainer, Ashley does follow some data users whenever it comes to train new baristas. For her, she has to follow certain regulations that are put forward on what they call the book, and it provides them with what the training needs to be for a certain day, what kind of time frames they're looking at, and so on. It sets some boundaries, but even with these policies that Starbucks is trying to enforce into their new baristas, it also gives them the space to be able to allow the trainer to connect with the new barista. For her, she wants to be able to connect with them in a way where she is able to give them new tips, give them some advice on how she likes to do things and what her experience was able to gain in order to make work easier for her and to be able to recognize the recipes, being able to enforce her new training and that new information into connecting with customers, connecting with other baristas, and so on. For Starbucks, there are many learning experiences that are provided to many of their positions, such as being a new barista, being a barista with experience, a trainer, a shift lead, and so on. So when asking Ashley about what she meant by the book when it comes to training baristas, does she think it's a good learning process to follow? For her, it's a 50-50 chance. She likes to think that the book is able to create some time goals, to be able to push baristas to reach these certain expectations on covering certain objectives. But there is a lot more to learn. Being a barista takes a lot of time to get the hang of. This can mean following certain recipes, certain policies, and so on. So for this, in order to push them into being a more well-rounded person, they want to be able to enforce them to ask questions if needed. There is never a wrong time where anyone can ask a question, and for that you'll be able to grow within your position. Now, from creating a learning experience, we ask, how does a barista improve their work ethic through it? For Ashley, this means to be able to take constructive criticism and grow for it. For constructive criticism, it is very hard for people to acknowledge, and it doesn't make it easier if the person is approaching you with these tips and this advice. It comes in either like a negative approach or such an approach that you are not able to comprehend. So for a shift lead, you must be able to sympathize with your baristas, be able to connect with them and just help them grow to become a more well-run barista. And being able to learn how to work in a fast-pacing job, it is easier to be able to help each other and to learn from mistakes than having a negative attitude about it. Now for an assessment and evaluation of learners, as how does she evaluate her baristas, especially when it's differing from a store manager to a shift lead. For a shift lead, Ashley notices their growth over time. She's able to see how a barista progresses and if they're able to take the tips and advice that are provided for them. This allows them to be able to acknowledge not only their growth within that position, but even praise them for being a great barista and just encourage them to continue on with their good work. Now, how do these certain assessments test to their progress? What really happens is when we are to take notice of a well-run barista, many shift leads decide to take on these assessments by examining them during trainings, such as practicing out new drinks and so on, to be able to review the knowledge that they have when it comes to work. And because of these certain assessments and being able to see the progress through them, they are able to take recommendations when it comes to possibly a manager seeking for new shift leads, maybe seeking for a new trainers and so on, in order to help them progress into the company and to look closer as well to their work ethic. Now for a leader's use of optimism, we asked Ashley, what does optimism mean on your leadership style, as well as what does it mean when it comes to working on the floor? And for Ashley, it is very important. Starbucks is a very fast-pacing job with a lot of stress that comes behind it because there are so many things that you have to take into consideration to acknowledge, such as steps, recipes, and so on. So it could be very stressful, and as a shift lead, you have to be able to keep optimism alive. You have to encourage your baristas to take work as a happy environment, a safe environment, and even a fun environment as well, to be able to work as a team. For any organization, optimism is an important factor that must be included. It is helpful when working and to simulate determination to pursue career goals or adjust to a changing work environment. As a barista myself, I love being able to have a positive workplace. It not only makes the days go on faster, but it does help you to connect with your team, connect with your management, and even connect to customers as well. With that positivity, you are motivated to do your best and to reach for those objectives and goals that you are aiming for. Now, how does a leader advocate for others? For Ashley, when it comes to advocating for baristas or even shift leads or trainers as well, it requires to be able to take feedback. Work is not always perfect. There are many things that can be often overlooked, and to avoid that, they must be able to take on work conflicts, tensions, or even like the smallest complaint of against like policies or against a work ethic and so on, and be able to acknowledge what it means and how it holds a certain value for baristas. Taking in this feedback, you are able to not only grow from it as a leader, but help your other leaders grow with it. They take on these feedbacks and take them to maybe like a shift meeting or having a one-on-one with a certain shift lead and so on. Just being able to hear and see what is going on the floor and between your baristas, you're able to change the atmosphere and create a positive one to help support them along their way. As a leader, your mission is not only to provide a safe environment, but to be able to support the people you work with and grow from it. You have to be able to look at the bigger picture to change the way that policies are run and so on. By creating these regulations and boundaries, we're able to not only connect with the people around us, but being able to understand one another as well. As an educator, your goal is to advocate for your learners, help them be able to grow on their own, and to assist them along the way in order to succeed further around in the future. Now, for me, this interview has been an amazing opportunity. I have heard so many perspectives from different shift leads over my years as working at Starbucks myself, but being able to sit down and talk to someone about what this job means for them, what the roles and responsibilities they carry in order to make their plays efficient and effective, and be able to connect with their team overall, it is amazing to be able to take this into consideration and just being able to not only take their own learning experience from it, but to see how they can push these new learning experience onto the baristas. It has been something that you can see in any educator. An educator doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in a classroom. It can mean from training new people at work, being able to create meetings, and so on. It's just amazing to being able to see how an educator can represent so many different people in so many different ways. I want to thank Ashley Lahal to be able to help me throughout this interview for my individual assignment and being able to set up this presentation based on her experiences as a shift lead and just being able to reflect what that means for work, and even me as a barista taking that on into consideration as I go further into my career here in Starbucks. Here is my references page as well as the picture citations that I include in this PowerPoint. Thank you so much for listening.